Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. What we're going to do in this video is swap this switch out. This is a US 16 port 150 watt PoE switch, and we're going to pull it out of the rack and we're going to replace it with this Unifi switch 24 PoE. Now the reason why I'm replacing the 16 port switch is because the fan on this switch gets quite loud when it's running, and this rack is located just adjacent to the studio, which is right behind this camera. So by replacing the 16 port PoE switch with the 24 port PoE switch, it'll quiet down everything on the rack. The aggregation switch is fanless, the switch 24 is fanless, and once we have the switch 24 PoE in the rack, that will also be fanless and cut down somewhat on the noise. So the plan is to look at the switch 24 PoE under the overhead camera. We'll take a closer look at it. We'll jump out to Ubiquity's website. We'll take a look at the features and the specs. We'll get it hooked up to the network, get it adopted, updated if it needs it. We'll make sure the switch ports are set to the proper VLAN so that everything is working properly. Once we have all that set, we'll come back in here and then do the physical removal of the 16 port switch, put the 24 port switch PoE into place. We'll go back to the computer one final time just to make sure everything on the network is working properly. So if that sounds like something of interest to you, stick around. We're going to get started with the look at the switch 24 PoE in just a second. Okay, taking a look at what comes inside the box with the switch 24 PoE, you get the switch itself, the power cord, the ears for mounting on a rack, you get a quick start guide, and then you get a package of rack screws and nuts. So let's take a closer look at the switch itself. So the switch itself has the same form factor pretty much as the switch 24. It's about 17.5 inches wide, about 8 inches deep, and sits about 1.75 inches from top to bottom. On the front of the switch, you can see it does have the 1.3 color touchscreen panel. It has 24 total RJ45 ports. The first 16 ports are 802.3 AT PoE+, and the final 4 ports are just regular 1 gig RJ45 ports. You also get 2 SFP ports right here. There's really nothing else to the switch, nothing on the top. Nothing, as you can see, on the bottom, the sides, everything's solid. On the rear of the unit, you have some branding and information, and then the power port. So that's a quick look at the switch. Now what I want to do is go over to Ubiquity's website, and we'll take a look at some of the specs. So now that we're on Ubiquity's website, you can see here that the switch 24 PoE is a layer 2 PoE switch. Like I said, it has the 24 RJ45 ports, 16 of which are 802.3 AT PoE+, and the 2 1 gig SFP ports. Looking down at the features, as I mentioned, it's got the 1.3 inch LCM color touchscreen with AR switch management. Again, the 16 ports of 802.3 AT PoE. It's got 8 regular RJ45 ports, 2 1 gig SFP ports, a total of 95 watts PoE supply, and it is fanless, which is the reason why I'm swapping it out for the 16 port 150 watt PoE. It's the reason why I'm removing that switch and putting in the switch 24 PoE. You can see it's managed with the Unifi controller, and it requires a minimum of at least version 5.11.27 or later. The current price is $379, and it happens to be in stock at the time of the recording of this video. If we look down at some more of the features, again, here are the dimensions. I was pretty close. I said 17.5. It's 17.42 by 7.87 by 1.72. The weight with the brackets, 6.81 pounds. Without the brackets, 6.61 pounds. It's got 26 gigabits per second of total non-blocking throughput. Switching capacity is 52 gigabits per second. Maximum power consumption, excluding PoE output, is 25 watts. So with that, what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead. We'll get the switch connected to the network. We'll get it adopted. We'll update it if it needs to be. And then we'll go ahead with the physical removal and swap in the rack. So stay tuned. Okay, everyone, I'm signed into my Unifi controller. And this controller is a cloud-hosted controller, not a local controller. So that said, I'm going to bring up the Unifi Discovery tool, which is a cool Chrome extension. It's still available in the Chrome store. So if you want to find Unifi devices easily to get them adopted, this is a great discovery tool to use. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to click on Unifi Family. Here you can see it does find the Unifi Switch 24 POE, and its status is pending. So we are going to go ahead and try to get this guy adopted. It should appear here in the background in the Unifi controller. So let's go ahead and let me click on the action button. Okay, we're going to set the inform URL. So I'm just going to type in my information. We're going to go ahead and hit execute. And if all goes well, we should see the new switch pop up here with a pending state. And here we go. It's right here. So we're going to go ahead. You can see it took on the address 192.168.25.221. And it says pending adoption. Excuse me. I've just been getting over a cold. I've been sick for quite a few weeks. So we're going to come over here and we're going to click on adopt. And it says it's adopting the switch. So we'll go back up to the Unifi Discovery tool. And we'll go ahead and we'll issue the inform command a second time. And we should just watch the progress here. Eventually, if it's successful, it should change to provisioning and then connected. There we go. It's changed to provisioning, and it should change to connected in a second or two. Well, a couple of seconds. While we're waiting for it to finish provisioning, let's go take a look at the Unifi Switch 16, the one that's coming out. You can see I gave it a static IP address of 25.5. Let's take a look at the ports for a second, because I mentioned that we have to make sure we set the VLANs properly on the new switch. So right here, you can see I have a camera VLAN. So these are my two rear Amcrest cameras, and you can see I have them. The profile is on a camera VLAN 10. And if we come over here, these are the three Grand Stream access points. They're on the main network. And here we have the Bose SA5 amplifier, and it's on my IoT VLAN. So we have to change one of the ports for the Bose amplifier to IoT. And then this is, okay, this is on my main network. It's my UCM 6302. And I know a lot of you are going to be saying that I should separate my voice network from my main LAN. And this is a very small network with a small phone system. So it works for me on the main LAN. But if I had 20 plus phones, then I would definitely put the voice on its own VLAN. But for my home network, keeping it on my main LAN works just fine. Okay, so that said, let's go back and look at the Switch 24 POE. Here it is. What I'm eventually going to do is, once I remove the 16-port switch from the rack, I'm going to assign the new switch the same IP address, 25.5. So for right now, we'll just leave it set to pull the DHCP address until we get the 16-port out of the rack. So let's go ahead and let's click on the Switch 24 POE. And let's just take a look and see if it needs, actually, let me close this. Let's go ahead and see if it needs an upgrade. So yep, it definitely does need an upgrade. So I'll go ahead and I'll start the upgrade process, and then I'll just stop the video and we'll come back once the upgrade has concluded. Are you sure you want to upgrade the switch from 4.322 to 576.7? And we'll go ahead and we'll say confirm. Okay, so we have a status of connected. So the switch is provisioned, it's connected, and it's been updated to the latest firmware. So that said, let's go over back to the rack. Let's pull out that 16-port switch, get the new switch installed, and we'll come back and we'll check everything. We'll set the ports for the VLANs, and we'll make sure everything is working properly. Okay, we're back at the rack. We're going to power down the 16-port switch, take out all the cables, pull it out, put the new switch in, put all the patch cables back, and then we'll head back over to the computer, set the IP address, set the VLANs, and we should be good to go. So let's get started. Okay, so we pulled out the old switch. We got the new switch in, all mounted. I connected the DAC cable from the aggregation switch to the top SFP port. I got all the patch cables patched in. I ended up using the same power cable that was powering up the 16-port switch. So at this point, we should be good to go. We should be able to head back to the computer now, change that IP address and those switch port VLANs, and everything should be working as it was before. So let's head back over to the computer and check it out. All right, let's go back into the Unifi controller at this point and finish setting up and configuring that switch 24 POE. Okay, so we're back in the Unifi controller. If you look at the very bottom here, you can see the Unifi switch POE 150 watt is disconnected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to remove this switch completely from the Unifi controller. Now, I may repurpose this switch down the road, but if I do, I'll probably factory reset it and just start from scratch. So let's go ahead and click on that switch, and we'll come over to the config wheel, and we'll come all the way down to where it says manage device. We'll click the plus sign to expand that. We're just going to scroll down to where it says forget this device. I'm going to click on forget. We get the message here, the confirmation that says, are you sure you want to remove it? And I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to say remove. Now, that's an option that I selected to do. You don't have to do that, but at this point for me, where I plan to go with the network, at this point, I don't need it in the Unifi controller any longer at this point. So let's go ahead now. Let's click on the switch 24 POE. Let's go into the config. Let's come down to the network. We'll expand that. And the first thing I want to do is set the IP address to 25.5. So we'll take over the IP address of the 16-port switch. So we'll come here and we'll change it to 25.5. We'll give it the subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. We'll give it the gateway of 192.168.25.1. We'll give it a preferred DNS of the same. And we'll give it an alternate DNS of 1.1.1.1. We'll just double check everything. And we'll go ahead and we'll say queue changes and apply changes. You can see now the switch is provisioning. Okay, so now that the switch has got a connected status, let's click on it once again. Let's come over to the ports and we'll change the VLANs for the ports. So here's one of the cameras. Here's the other Amcrest camera. So let's click on this and let's come down to switch port profile. Let's click on the drop down where it says all, and we're going to click on our camera VLAN 10 network. And we're going to come and say apply. We're going to do the same thing for port 3 because that's the other Amcrest camera in the backyard. So I'm going to come down, we're going to say camera VLAN 10, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to say apply. Now let's scroll all the way down, and we're going to come down to port 20, and I could tell that this is the Bose amplifier because it's connected at 10100. So we're going to click on that and we're going to change that to the IoT VLAN of 60. We're going to go ahead and we're going to say apply. And now the switch is provisioning. So once the switch finishes provisioning, we should be able to check on things and make sure everything is working. So the first thing I'll do is we'll switch cameras and I'll switch over to the, let's go over to the overhead camera, and you can see over in this area here, I have a couple of phone extensions. So I'll pick up the rotary phone, which is extension 1000, and I'll dial over to my main line, which is extension 203, and we'll see if we can ring extension 203. That'll tell me that the PBX is back up online. And you can see now that the extension 203 is ringing. Okay, so we could reverse it, but this isn't a video on the actual PBX, so we can see that the PBX is back up online, so that's a good thing. I'm just going to quickly check the cameras from my phone just to make sure the cameras on the camera VLAN came back up online. And my cameras are back online. I would show it to you, but you guys are not going to see it on the small phone screen. So that being said, guys, that's pretty much it. That's the way we swapped out the 16-port PoE switch for the new switch 24 PoE. So now the rack in that back room should be as silent as possible with all 3 switches being fanless. So if you like this video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Be sure to check out some of the other videos that I have here posted up above. Please remember, subscribe, like, and share this video. And thank you again for using the Amazon affiliate links. I know they don't change your price, but they really do help out the channel. My name is Tony with Quick Tech Solutions. As always, please stay safe. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. And as always, I'd like to thank our Patreon supporters. And if you would like to help support the channel, there's links to the Patreon page and PayPal down in the video description.